Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the fourth episode of the story where Kushina is taken away from her son and then sold to Orochimaru. There, she is turned into his successor. 13 years later, she returns for revenge and her son. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. The Nanabai retrieval group quickly made their way towards the edges of town, approaching the looming valley walls. The nature was wild, and they saw ruins of collapsed buildings. I don't remember Taki ever being invaded. Naruto commented as he saw that. Temari nodded, trying to remember herself. It must be of Taki's glory days then, before they took heavy losses during the First Shinobi War. They never produced a ninja worth noting afterwards. Guren theorized. Anko nodded in agreement. It must be around here. Are you sure we are not being followed, Anko? Guren spoke softly. Anko nodded her head, having discreetly dispersing snakes ever since they left the small populated area. Nobody around, unless they are really good. Naruto, Guren spoke, drawing him away from observing the ruins. The information is still correct, although we did not know Fu is Shibuki's cousin. So be careful with any arguments you have relation family. She was surprised when Naruto's scowl deepened at the information. He must be a coward then if he allows his cousin to live in this crappy area. He gestured towards a half-collapsed shack, and upon closer observation Guren noticed it was patched left and right. In that ruined shack. He finished. Guren couldn't help but grimace in disgust herself. The roof didn't look watertight, and the wall looked like they were held together by a prayer instead of structural integrity. As they came closer, the doors suddenly flung open. What do you want? The girl asked harshly, her orange eyes burning with anger, her mint green hair unkempt, a single orange hairclip hanging helplessly in it. Are you here to fight? She hissed after taking the startled group. Anko and Temari had their hands close on their weapons. Her posture was cocky, assured she could fight a good fight. We are not here to fight. Naruto said as he stepped forward, cutting off Guren. So why are you here? She demanded. We are here to keep you out of Konoha's hands, Miss Seven. Naruto replied bluntly, figuring if the girl was anything like him, she wanted the truth straight. I would hate to fight my replacement later on. He added, strengthening the fact they were not from Konoha and hinting he was also a demon container. Replacement, the girl couldn't help but parrot. In response Naruto started to channel a small amount of Kyuubi's chakra. Making friends with that misshapen bug? Kyuubi mocked in his mind. Says the fox with rabbit ears. Naruto shot back, eliciting a deep growl from the fox before it retreated deeper into his mind. After a moment Fu's eyes widened. You are like me, she gasped out. Chomei recognizes Kyuubi. Naruto couldn't help but pout slightly. Not slipping Kyuubi's name, he thought to himself. They know better than to give away my name. He heard the fox speak from the depths of his mind. I was Konoha's container, treated the same as you are. Naruto spoke, ignoring any further comments the fox might have. So. Those letters promising better treatment were all lies, eh? As expected. Fu commented, her distaste quite clear. Indeed, Naruto agreed. Danzo would have turned you into a emotionless drone to use for the good of Konoha before discarding you when you break or die. Or he would sacrifice you to Akatsuki when they come. Fu did not recognize the name, but snorted in agreement. So what do you want? She asked again, less hostile this time. Naruto smiled, glad he managed to get the girl listen to him without blowing him off. Ideally, we would like for you to join Oto. He said up front. The girl snorted dismissively. Otherwise, we would like to keep you out of Konoha's hands. He added honestly. But as fellow container I would not advise that. Your cousin effectively gave you up to us, and Taki would not be able to protect you against Akatsuki. The girl frowned. You mentioned that Akatsuki again. Naruto was surprised she didn't know. His mother had given him the impression Taki might not be large, but that did intelligence quite well despite their size. I am surprised you do not know, they are a group of roughly 10 class missing ninja hunting the all-the-tailed beasts for some mysterious reason, and by extension, us containers. He paused for a moment. You might not know it, but you will not survive the extraction. My mother is an unique exemption. Fu looked intrigued at the last part of the sentence, before sobering up at the realization that aside from a bad life, she had now a group of maniacs after her head. Ugh. Just great, I am hated and now I have a group of power people after my head. Naruto chuckled, understanding the feeling. He remembered he felt unhappy when he learned such a group was after him. So, I join you or die. Fu spoke after a moment of thought, but Naruto sensed the edge under the question. No, we are offering you a choice. You can join Oto and be free from being mistreatment. He pointedly ignored the snort of disbelief. Or you could go with us, and be free, at the risk of being hunted by the likes of Akatsuki, and when they find out, the rest of the villages who want a new Jinchuriki, getting it most likely by ripping Nanabai out of your corpse. Or you could stay here, and become Danzo's puppet when he finds out about our ruse. Naruto summarized. So what's the catch with joining Oto? None. If you do not want to, you will not have to go out on missions, and only have to fight to protect the village. Naruto replied, his mother had made several offers, keeping the girl out of Konoha's and Akatsuki's hands was vital, and she was willing to pay a good price to do so. You lie, she hissed, and Naruto sensed a small amount of tailed beast chakra emanate from her. Nobody would give me such an, she started to rant. Naruto had shot a quick look to Anko, mouthing, are we still alone? Anko nodded. He interrupted her loudly. You forget, I am in a container, and my mother, the leader of Oto, was one. Fu's rant stopped silent, and she just stared for a while. Her cocky pose she had seemed to sink in herself as she just looked at Naruto. She asked, nearly a whisper, so I will be Fu, not the bug girl. Not demon bug. Just Fu. Naruto smiled kindly. Yeah, Fu from Oto. If they have a problem with you, they got a problem with me, and we'll kick their asses together. Naruto spoke encouragingly. You promise? Of course, there are only 9 of us, so we need to stick together. Naruto spoke, smile still on his face. Fu pulled herself together, allowing herself to hope once more that her life might actually improve. She looked at the rest of the group and was surprised. Guren smiled warmly at her, glad the girl seemed convinced, whether mission was a success or not took the back seat the moment she saw how the girl lived. Anko was disinterested, all the soft and touchy-touchy feelings were not her forte nor interest. Temari smiled kindly, yet inwardly winced slightly at the reminder of what Gaara had been because she was too afraid until Kushina came along and set them straight. Her inner demon, Chome was supportive too, but the gigantic, happy-go-lucky bug, calling itself Lucky 7 whenever it had a chance to was always up for watching its container get into trouble. She gave it one more thought, before saying, all right. I will come. The smile Naruto beamed at her made her feel funny inside for some odd reason, and she was sure it wasn't the 7-tailed bug. Kushina bit back a curse as she sifted through the Uzumaki scrolls Naruto had stolen from Konoha. Although the scrolls contained the things she wanted, namely the location of the Shinigami shrine, it lacked the details of exactly what a summoner could do once they called the death god, and before their soul ended up as lunch. Thankfully she did catch a passage mentioning the freeing of eaten souls, and there were no mentions of any time limits before a soul was digested and lost, so her dear husband's soul, and more importantly, the other half Kyubi should still be present. I still don't understand why he split the Kyubi. She thought to herself once more, the 8 trigram seal is much more powerful, despite its greater allowance of interaction with Kyubi's chakra than my 4 trigrams reinforced with 16 stake seal. She shook herself clear of the thought, knowing from experience she could waste hours trying to find out what her insane power hungry. Whatever her supposedly husband was thinking in his final moments. She took the coordinates described in the scroll, sadly they were user map-based coordinates, and she was lacking in an Yuzu-based map. She spent the next hour calculating, and wondered if Minato, or one of his predecessors had visited the shrine. Or did they summon a death god without thinking about maintaining his shrine that allows them to do so? I wonder if the jutsu would ever backfire. She held back a small snigger at the idea of the Shinigami reaping all the souls in Konoha as punishment. She double-checked her math, glad she paid attention as a young girl when her uncle explained her the importance of maps, and how Yuzu guarded some of its secrets through them. She drew the probable location on the abnormal map, and once again bit back a curse. The shrine was located reasonably close to Konoha, and on the wrong side of looking from Oto. Meaning she couldn't pay a quick visit, as she would have to circle around a long way. Even worse, she only knew on a map where it was, she still had to get through whatever old seals that were working to fool passing travelers, or prevent scouts from finding the shrine. That meant she had to choose, send the available scout team she had to find the possible Yuzu survivor or send them to find the shrine. She once again wished she had more personnel available, but with the bull-headed Raikage getting impatient, she had to show a strong front, to ensure if he wanted to vent his frustrations, he would vent them on Konoha forces, not hers. Despite his bull-headed exterior, he was still a tactician, quite smart and to top it off, a good ninja, so he would go for the soft spot first instead of possible overextending himself into an unknown opponent. She couldn't afford an extended skirmish with Kumo's forces, not without Konoha properly distracted by IWA. Damn you fence-sitter, didn't you hate Konoha? Show the senile old backbone of yours. She ranted in her mind as Inoki still hadn't moved overtly against Konoha, something that went completely against her expectation, and her spies in IWA were still unable to figure out the why, something that frustrated her. The only way she saw that could possibly entice IWA in doing something despite their obvious reluctance would be the destruction of Taki, which would severely hamper Konoha's northward supply chain. Despite keeping the Konoha Nin in arm's length, the Taki did supply all the patrolling forces for the northern part of the Land of Fire. But despite the hard glare Kushina was sending Taki over the map, it wasn't like the village would suddenly explode. Shinkiro organized the reports in his office, pleased that Suna now had its own, reliable source of water with their successful incursion of the Land of Rivers. After the invasion they left a sizable gap in Konoha's forces, which meant that its allied village in the Land of Rivers, Tanigakure, had to fend for far more themselves. However, instead of using an overwhelming assault to conquer the land, Shinkiro opted to use a very slow, low-intensity skirmishing to wear down Tani. Although the complete control over the Land of Rivers would be pleasant indeed, it would also trigger a full-scale war with Konoha, the giant he had poked in the eye in other vital spots earlier. So instead he slowly chipped his way through, seizing a major river system to prevent the enemy from poisoning his forces, and making Suna far less dependent on the Mother Nature. Shinkiro both cursed Iwa's passiveness like Kushina did for these reasons, slowing down his own plans, but was also grateful for it. The barren wasteland borders Suna shared with Ishigakure, a traditional IWA ally, was very silent. Some would say too silent, but IWA send a bare minimum of forces to Ishi, and Shinkiro responded in kind, both to keep a larger force at the ready should Konoha respond, and non-verbally show Inoki he was also far more interested in the wounded giant. He spared a brief thought about his daughter under Kushina's care, but ensured himself she was just training Kushina's boy, not getting into wanton fights and causing needless property damage. He couldn't help but shiver suddenly, but could not explain why. He decided blame Gaara. The boy was no longer bloodthirsty, and actually gathered a good amount of respect for his eagerness to fight dangerous opponents. Gaara must have found a strong opponent. Tani has more powerful shinobi than I predicted. He mused as he remembered the reports about opponents Gaara had dueled and crushed. Pain, god of Amigakure, scowled as his angel Conan brought him the reports of the ever-developing world situation. He was annoyed he did not foresee Konoha's invasion by Suna and Oto, nor the disproportionate amount of damage the pair managed to leave on the Hidden Leaf village. Pain had no love for the village, but under Hiruzen's leadership it was central to upholding the fragile peace he needed to gather all the Bju to turn it into a more permanent one. Now however, that plan was in tatters. He had already seen the delay his plans would incur when Yagura, the standby container, would fall to the rebels. He was unsure if the rebel leader would be able to take down Yagura, but in the shinobi world, one had to expect the unexpected. After all, he had taken down a legend himself. Now however, that delay seemed insignificant. In the possible upcoming Fourth Shinobi War, the demon containers would be used as weapons of war. On the surface one would think that would provide him with an opportunity to snatch them away, but in practice it was far more likely one of them would die fighting without their demon extracted, meaning another delay in his plans as they had to wait for the demon to reform. And the ones that were not sent to the front lines would be squirreled away like precious treasures to kept at all costs. Garnering unwanted attention to his organization once he stole the first one, locking away the remaining ones even further when the other nations learned what happened. Further, his nation he ruled over was dead center between three opposing sides, Konoha West, Suna South and Iwa North, and his own non-Akatsuki forces were stretched keeping his relative small nation safe, and not used as another battleground again. And even if he managed to snatch them, both sides would notice his people doing that, and would swarm down on them, instead of trying to figure out if they lost contact with their container, or simply decide not to care as they would in peacetime. Deep inside his tower, hidden from view, Nagato, the real body sighed. His dreams of peace so far away. So, is it possible for me to take some revenge on Taki? Fu asked as she finished packing all the things she truly cared about in her shack into a bright red cylindrical bag, which she flung diagonally on her back. Naruto shot a look towards Guren. His own response would be a loud, yes, but it wasn't his call to make. Guren seemed in thought for a moment. That depends, she decided to admit, and Fu looked disappointed, but seemed to have expected it. Do you know a way out of here through that cave system we came in with? Fu brightened slightly. I do, I know several routes out. They will be guarded however. Guren seemed to accept this. What do you have in mind for your revenge? She asked as she withheld the urge to lean against the shack's wall, unsure if it would hold up against her weight. Anko leaned in closer from a worn-down chair, the idea of chaos tingling her interest, while Temari suddenly had the sinking feeling she did not want to be here. Do you know about the hero's water? Fu asked, getting 4 head shakes in response. Hero's water boosts your chakra levels enormously at the cost of your lifespan. Guren frowned. That is a dangerous thing for the enemy to have. But what does it have to do with her revenge? In the center of the village, at the base of the great tree, there is a small cave system leading through to the roots of the tree. The area is filled with natural energy, and the chakra-charged water collects in a small shrine which forms the base of the hero's water. Fu rambled on. Naruto blinked. His mother had covered senjutsu, the gathering of natural energy into oneself, but he had the impression only certain summoned clans had access to areas with thick natural energy for it to become sensible to a human's senses. That is interesting, but what does it have to do with your revenge? Guren admonished mildly to get the girl back on track. Fu scowled for a moment, before visible reining in a biting response. Since I am 7 I have been forced to risk my life getting the gathered water. She hissed. Risk your life? Natural energy should not be dangerous unless you willingly immerse yourself in it. Naruto commented with curiosity. Say that to the statues of those bug-scythe men halfway the cave then. Fu snorted. Temari was feeling lost. How does this natural chakra stuff transform you into a statue, and why wasn't Fu affected? She couldn't help but ask, eliciting another scowl from Fu. Because she is in demon container, she has far more chakra than the rest of the village, thus it would take far longer for her to reach the point of no return if the natural chakra invades. I suppose is the best word. Her chakra system. Fu was surprised. Well, that explains why I had to do it every year. How do you know this? She asked with unabashed curiosity. Mom did some senjutsu training, but she never had the time to finish it before her master died and she had to take over. She did explain the theory to me since I'll most likely learn it when I am older. He explained. Fu looked fascinated at the concept you could learn how to use the energy she felt every time she entered the cave. Once again, this is all very educative, but what has it to do with your revenge? Gyurin cut in again, slightly annoyed the conversation kept going off track. Fu scowled, before simply biting out, that place is important to them, they took important things from me, I want to take something important from them. Naruto couldn't help but think that sounds petty. He blinked with sudden realization. It does boil down that revenge actually is, you hurt me, I hurt you back. Before he could ponder it further, Gyurin cut in again. Sorry Fu. But it sounds very risky for just revenge. Gyurin tried diplomatically. For you, not for me and Fu. Naruto cut in. They must stockpile this water somewhere, right? You, Enko and Temari can take that out while Fu and I blow up the source. That way Taki can't use the stuff against Odo. Enko smiled wickedly, signaling her approval for that plan. Temari looked lost while Gyurin held back a sigh. What happened to, get in, grab the girl, get out? But she was well aware how important it would be for the girl, and Odo would have removed an disadvantage. So she decided to see if they could plug all the holes in Naruto's makeshift plan. Alright, we will need time-delayed explosive tags then, we can hardly leave if the village is burning, they won't let us. We could stall for a day, but I think we will garner too much attention buying the things here. In response, Naruto rummaged through the different pockets on his Chunin vest, before pulling out a tiny storage scroll. He unsealed the contents, revealing a small ink pot with a brush. I can make those tags, I just need paper. Fu unexpectedly spoke up. Will any paper do? Naruto nodded yes, causing Fu to shoot off, searching through the mess she made, grabbing the most important things to her. Ah, here it is, not crumpled too, she crowed. That will do excellently, Naruto praised his fellow container as he made several clones, who started drawing with him. I was not aware Kushina-sama already taught you that much. Gyurin admitted as she watched Naruto work confidently. I admit my training is a bit scattered thanks to that mission to Konoha, but I am confident enough I can make these seals. Gyurin found the statement a bit odd, but decided to drop it. The next hour and a half the group looked over a map Fu quickly drawn about the locations relevant to the hero's water. Fu explained how the collection of the energized water was actually the first step of a long process. Drinking the energized water raw would turn the drinking person to stone. Something that made sense. After Naruto's explanation of nature chakra earlier, Gyurin was glad all the buildings were clustered, so they could take them out with a well-placed detonation plan, which was reasonable close to the preferred exit, and Naruto had ensured her that the tags would go off after a few hours. Gyurin looked at the tags, raising a quizzical eye towards Naruto. Are you sure they work? I don't recognize them. She commented, expecting seeing the normal large explosion symbol in the center, with several pillars of other symbols around it. Instead she saw a large spiral around the explosive symbol, with several pillars arising outward along the spiral, but not connecting to itself. Of course, do you think my mom wasted her time teaching me? Naruto replied, his offended feelings clear in his tone. Gyurin shrugged, must be Uzumaki's sealing thing. She wrote it off. Naruto huffed, well, those are yours, I made some special ones. He gestured to some bigger sheets, which subsequently a bigger seal on them. For the underground shrine. Enko looked interested. What's the difference? She asked. They make a bigger explosion, and need more chakra to trigger too, but with me and Fu there that shouldn't be a problem. He replied, fully turned towards Enko, missing the gleeful sparkle in Fu's eyes. Gyurin walked outside, double-checking the environment before returning. I still can't believe there are no patrols inside Fu, they really must be confident about their security. Fu snorted, it's not like they got the people to spare. The town is even more ghostly since that invasion in Konoha by you guys. Gyurin nodded, secretly pleased on how Fu worded the sentence, clearly not association herself with Taki. Very well, according to the plan we cooked up earlier, we will plant our tags 20 minutes after you left. Both demon containers nodded. Now I am certain Kushina-sama is interested in this hero water, but don't risk yourself turning into those statues. Understood? Yes mom, Naruto said cheekily, getting a whack on the head from an embarrassed Guren while Anko chuckled in the background. Yuki-chan is a handful enough Narukan. Guren shot back. Now go, she said in a stern tone, indicating the time for playing around was over. Naruto and Fu left Fu's shack, and quickly ran through the ruins to the edge of the lake. I don't see anyone, Naruto confirmed as he looked around, ignoring Fu's eye roll. Duh, she said as she started to sprint over the water, Naruto right behind her. Fu flawlessly led him to a small pavilion nestled between the massive tree's roots, hidden from view from the outside. She lit a small rusty lamp that was hanging off a small post and silently walked into the cave. Naruto followed her, and after a minute of walking down he already felt the air was different. A couple of minutes later he saw the first statue Fu talked about and understood why he named them. The vaguely humanoid statue had nearly cartoonish bug eyes, upper arm replaced by a vicious-looking scythe while the lower legs looked more like those of a bug than of a human. He failed to repress a shiver, and quickly picked up the pace with Fu, neither interested to become such a thing. Another handful of minutes they came into a large cave, and Naruto felt the weird chakra thick in the air. The bottle I get every year is in the center. Fu spoke softly, I need to slowly chip off all the chalk so I don't break it. Can you try to break it free while I place the tags? He asked. The girl hesitated, before nodding, darting quickly between the few rocks and statues before carefully freeing the large bottle. Naruto followed her lead, and placed multiple tags in a semicircle around the shrine. I got it, Fu spoke triumphantly. Are you done? Yeah, I am, Naruto replied as he triggered the last tag. The pair made their way out as soon as they could, Fu snuffing out the lamp as they came near the cave exit. Naruto shivered as he felt the odd air leave him again, but still felt slightly odd inside and quickly inspected himself to see if he was turning into stone somewhere. You'll feel weird like that for a while. Fu said, recognizing the behavior. Naruto scowled, but nodded. Guren, Anko and Temari must be nearly done themselves. Let's go to that cave, we need you to guide us out after all. Out. Fu echoed softly as she took the lead. It suddenly sank into her she would truly be free from all the name-calling, glaring or willfully ignoring her. Perhaps I don't even have to beg anymore to be trained. She thought with a spark of hope, one that was constantly getting lit as she saw he fellow containers' apparent wisdom and power. They again ran over the lake, this time to the more inhabited cluster of buildings, running through the empty street as silent as they could, before shooting past the few buildings that processed the hero's water. Naruto took a moment to feel stupid as he remembered his own demolition attempt at the Hokage Tower, and quickly tried to spot any tags, but found none. They got close to the cave, and slowed down, trying to see any guards or the rest of the team. Both jumped when they suddenly heard a voice call out, "You made it, Guren," Naruto hissed back in surprise, placing the voice. Anko laughed softly, surprised brats, she ogled the bottle Fu was still holding, although she nearly dropped it when Guren called out. So that's the magic water. Doesn't look anything special. Before another time-consuming discussion could break out, Guren cut in, is there a reason Fu is still holding it? Fu shook her head, the water can be sealed away. We didn't want to stay in the cave any longer. Naruto looked surprised something with so much chakra could easily be sealed, but quickly whipped out an empty storage scroll for Fu to place the bottle on, and in a puff of smoke it disappeared. Guren took the scroll and stashed it away in her clothing. Alright Fu, show us the way out. Guren ordered. Fu nodded and took the lead down into the dark caves, grabbing a new lantern from the posts near the entrance and lighting it. Somebody take another one for at the back, Otherwise you'll spend most of the time stumbling around, Enko, Guren simply said, and Enko silently followed Fu's example. The group took off in a single-line formation. Guren was slightly worried when Fu paused a couple of times, taking the possible routes with narrowed eyes as trying to remember hard. After the third time she asked carefully. "Are you sure you know the route?" She didn't see Fu's scowl at being doubted. "I do, but they change it every 3 days, opening and closing exits with a Doton Jutsu. I am making sure I am not mistaking an old route with the correct one," she said back. Anko at the back held back a whistle. She couldn't imagine how much of a headache it would be to remember a new route every 3 days, or the code for it. In the darkness the rocks all looked the same. "We trust you, Fu, do you best," Naruto spoke encouragingly from the center of the formation. Fu's smile was unseen, but inwardly she preened at the praise. The group continued the journey silently for another couple of minutes before Fu suddenly turned off her lamp and halted, causing Guren to nearly bump into her. Enko followed Fu's lead moments after, plunging them into the darkness. "4-man patrol up ahead," she said silently. Guren frowned. She had expected to take them out quickly in a short engagement, but Fu's action bound her to the silent approach, which wouldn't work in the near-total darkness, making it easy to stumble on the dark cave grounds. Enko agreed unknowingly with those thoughts, and silently spoke to Naruto. "Brat, summon a pack of poisonous snakes, you can spare the chakra. They can take those suckers out." "Understood," Naruto whispered after nodding in the darkness, before realizing the gesture would be unseen. With a Kuchiyos no Jutsu under his breath, with a poof, he felt a pack of snakes slither beneath his feet. "Did you hear something?" he heard one of the guards speak in the distance. "Take them out." He hissed to the snakes, and felt snakes slither away. He suspected he saw Fu shiver in the darkness as the snakes made their way past her legs. "I hope the guard goes down the same way they do in the books with that cheesy line." He saw the light of the guards coming closer, and they would soon reveal the group when the lead one suddenly paused. "Snakes?" he asked puzzled. Before his companions could respond, however, the lead ones lunged. The guards broke out in consternation, but before they could do anything about the snakes a sudden cry of "Shoten, Rakuku Shuriken," confused them momentarily. Moment later they also had to deal with a barrage of crystal shuriken, nailing the pair at the center, with the lead one already stopped twitching, a multitude of poisons having claimed his life. The last surviving member tried to turn and run. But the snakes were to close, and a barrage of kunai from Fu and Guren stopped him, allowing the snakes to sink their fangs into their flesh. The group reignited their lanterns, and walked over to the downed bodies as the snakes dispelled themselves. Guren was about to ask if it was safe to use a burying jutsu when the entire cave rumbled. A distant explosion was heard moments later. "Damn brat, I thought you said a bigger boom, but we heard it over here," Enko commented as she turned towards Naruto, whose eyes turned huge. "They weren't supposed to make such a bang, were they?" Enko said moments after taking the expression in. "That I expected the nature chakra to increase the power. But not like this," he said in subdued voice. Temari hissed a "silence" to the group as soon Naruto finished his sentence. "I hear water," Temari and Enko said at the same time after the moment of silence. Seconds after the group established they heard water, a longer, constant rumble shook the caves. "Shitgaki. It sounds like something massive is falling down," Enko trailed off, sparkles slowly creeping their way into her eyes. "You are so making me a stash of those tags." Fu and Temari looked confused. Naruto meanwhile imitated a fish beached on land. "They shouldn't have been that powerful," he thought. "What do you mean, something massive falling down?" Temari snapped. "The brat here took down that massive tree." Enko pointed out like it was the most normal thing in the world. Guren sked. "You could have warned us the explosion would be that powerful. We need to move quickly now. These caves are below the lake and I don't want to find out if the lake is capable of filling the caves or not now that they are clearly broken open." Fu snapped back at attention, not going to drown while trying to escape, she berated herself, taking the lead. The group quickly set off, leaving the bodies unburied. With their high pace, stealth forgotten, they did not see the group coming from the side path until it was too late. "Who is there?" somebody shouted. Anko cursed and threw her lamp to the startled Taki group, the lead enemy, recognizable as a Chunin from the duct under the lamp. "What the hell, woman?" he shouted before Guren impaled the startled man on her crystal blade. Naruto and Temari shot past Guren, forcing the man behind the killed Chunin to duck under Temari's wide swipe with her closed fan, only to get a kunai driven into his skull by Naruto. A man wearing a Jonin vest behind them dashed forward, katana raised to strike down the pair only to get clocked in the face by Anko. The woman that was rearguard backpedaled, and spotted Fu, who was looking unsure how to join the fight. "What the hell are you doing, bug bitch? They are the enemy, fight them," she shouted. "Shut up." Naruto roared as he tossed the man he killed aside and dashed to engage the woman in a furious hand-to-hand fight. "Sanaijishu!" Anko shouted as she launched a trio of snakes towards the back-flipping Jonin, who skillfully decapitated the snakes before they could bite him. She ran forward, and suddenly noticed her solid thuds of her footsteps turned into splashes. "That water level is rising, we need to finish this," she shouted as she used her kunai to block a slash. She sidestepped as she felt Guren approach from behind, who continued the duel with her crystal blades. Knowing what to do, she repeated her actions with the root agent, and quickly sprinted around the man, attacking him from behind. "Rondo Haru no Mai," the man suddenly shouted, and in a flashing shadow blade appeared in his free hand, and he quickly spun around, a third shadow hand with a blade slashing a large crescent above his head. Anko's reflexes stopped her on time, avoiding getting herself cut apart. Guren blocked the blow with her crystal blades, sending her backward. Anko spat string of curses involving the man's female family members, farming equipment and anatomically incorrect positions as she reopened the fight with the man. Fu nearly stumbled with a blush as she heard that while she was running to help Naruto and Temari deal with the rearguard woman. Naruto thought with surprise, she can curse worse than Taiyuya. "Why the hell are all Oto Kunoichi so foul-mouthed?" was Temari's line of thought, having encountered Taiyuya and heard more bad jokes about her fan than she ever wanted to hear. The woman handily shoved Naruto into Temari, unbalancing both. She leapt backwards, forming hand signs as she sailed through the air. "Suitan, Suidan no Jutsu," she shouted before expelling a stream of high-pressure water. Naruto and Temari dived to the sides. Naruto kept rolling as the woman pushed the high-pressure beam after him. Before she could hit him, however, Fu disrupted her attack with a kick. Naruto quickly went through his short jutsu list as Fu engaged the woman in hand-to-hand combat, but it was clear even to him she was lacking in experience in actual combat. He glanced around, trying to judge the distance between him and the walls and the flickering lights of the four lanterns scattered around. "I need some precision jutsu," he cursed to himself as he launched a multitude of chains from his back. "Fu! Duck!" he shouted. The green-haired girl spared him a quick glance, taking in the rapidly approaching chains before hitting the deck. Naruto slightly altered their course, ensuring he did not hit her. The woman leapt in the air to avoid getting skewered. Temari, whose hidden fears were affecting her judgment, fully opened her fan. With a cry, "Futon, Kazakiri no Jutsu," she launched a large cutting wind, which hurtled towards the Madare Kunoichi, who desperately tried to find something to replace herself with. The distance was far too short, however, and the wind sliced her in half before impacting roughly into the cavern wall, causing Anko to spit another stream of curses as she and Guren were still trying to defeat the man, who handily managed to keep himself from getting sliced apart with his shadow arm techniques. There was suddenly a loud rumble, and the cave shook. "You fanbrat better not be the cause of this." Anko roared as she lunged forward again, rapidly retracting her outstretched hand as the Jonin nearly cut it off. He whirled to face Guren, who attacked at the same time. As he did that, Anko awkwardly threw the kunai she was holding, scoring a glancing blow on his back, his vest absorbing most of it. It distracted him for a split second however, and allowed Guren to entrap his blade, and she stabbed him in the gut with her other. The man grunted in pain and wrenched himself free, leaving his blade entrapped in Guren's own crystal one, and took a cheap shot at Guren's face, who stumbled back in surprise. He whirled around Enko's follow-up attack, who had a new kunai in her hands, making hand signs as he moved. He is going to blow himself up. Guren shouted, and moments later she saw a handful of shuriken and a giant closed fan sail by. The man took the shuriken without blinking into his side, but noticed the giant fan too late, which impacted into his arm, breaking it, disrupting the seals he was forming. He stumbled, giving Enko the opening she needed to stab him in the neck, finally killing him. "Nice throw, fangirl," Enko quipped as Temari stomped to her fan, fishing it out of the now ankle-high water. "Shut up, I am trained to fight in a nice, big, open desert, not dank caves with chances of drowning." She bit out, her anger, annoyance and fear clear on her face. "Now can we go?" "I don't want to die," she growled. Guren rubbed her nose, the area the man managed to score a blow on. "Everyone all right?" she asked as she looked everyone over. "Then let's go, Fu, quick as you can," she ordered. The mint green-haired girl nodded, and quickly grabbed a lantern, who thankfully was still burning, the water failing to put the light out. Another rumble roared through the cave, accompanied by the sound of rushing water. "Is this place falling apart?" Enko hissed with worry. "It must be the thin walls they erect to hide the route to get in that are failing," Guren theorized. "Let's just go," Temari hissed. They walked for another 10 minutes, the sounds of large amounts of water approaching. To the group's gratitude, the cave started to rise again, and soon saw an opening. They exited into a valley. Fu stopped to enjoy the fresh air, but was pushed on by Guren, who took the lead. "We need to keep moving, we don't want to be here when the Taki ninja return to investigate Naruto's fireworks." They moved again, running out of the valley and leaping into the trees. After a while they came near to a clearing when Guren suddenly halted. "Who is there?" she shouted. Despite the soft sound, they clearly heard the flipping of pages. "Guren, the Crystal Maiden," a dark voice intoned. More pages flipped. Mitarashi Enko, Snake Sanin's apprentice. "Kyubi, Nanabai," the voice continued. "It seems investigating my old home has delivered me a variable treasure trove, and advanced the organization's goals at the same time. It is a good thing I left my idiot partner behind." The owner of the voice stepped into the clearing, his dark cloak hiding him well, but the red cloud highlights gave him away as beacons in a stormy sea. "Akatsuki," Guren and Naruto hissed. The masked man raised an eyebrow, barely seen in the dark and hidden under his headband. "You have heard of us, how interesting." "It doesn't matter, 2 good bounties and 2 jinchuriki, this will be profitable." "I have a bounty." Guren thought, shocked, surprised she was not recognized by it then in Taki. Enko subtly shifted, knowing enough this was an rank opponent, as strong as her old teacher. Temari shifted nervously, well aware that despite her strength, she was horrible outclassed. Fu looked unsure to Naruto for a clue what to do, who in turn readied himself to engage the man. His mother informed him they almost always works in pairs, and this man just had admitted he was alone. He must be cocky. Naruto mused, his mother's orders forgotten. Kakashi had been busy investigating ever since his return to Konoha, and every waking moment he did not spend on patrols, missions or other duties. He was talking to people, diving through the archives or prodding his old ANBU contacts for snippets of information. During this he got glimpses of a rot that escaped the venerable third Hokage, numbers that didn't add up, people appearing without complete backgrounds and most disturbingly, people disappearing without a reason. He was well aware Danzo launched a small witch hunt to find spies after the infiltration of the Uchiha and Hyuga compounds and the theft of many important documents and scrolls in the Hokage Tower, but these were long-term, and there were for Kakashi's feeling a disturbing amount of orphans who disappeared over the years. Yet Kakashi couldn't help but wonder how many possible political or physical opponents disappeared under the guise of being spies. And then there were the changes Danzo wanted to apply to Konoha, overhauling the academy, changing the requirements that every child needs to be tested for aptitude as a ninja. These were on the surface standard wartime protocols, but Kakashi was certain the Warhawk would warp these into much worse. However, there was only so much he could do alone. Kakashi realized, I can trust on Guy, but investigation is not his forte. Distraction is. He joked to himself before sobering up. Now that who could I trust and where can I gather them safely? The location was easy to find. At the edges of the industrial area there were plenty of ruined warehouses, now plundered of their contents. While all the war-related industries were rebuilt with haste, the civilian, or secondary support buildings were left behind. That's why Konoha still had a beach's worth of sand left generously by a chibi in the city. Perimeter. Getting the people to gather was harder, but the usage of old call signs, ANBU-style dead drops in people's homes and other personal messages made the task easier than it looked. Kakashi had quickly and personally enlisted the help of Guy, Asuma and his old ANBU team. From there it snowballed quickly, and at the appointed date his clone's memories showed more people slunk into the old warehouses than he had expected. The collected group watched Kakashi expectantly, each seeing the usual, flippant and always late Jonin underwent some significant change, his single visible eye hardened, the lazy expression he normally wore gone. Those who worked with Kakashi during his ANBU times recognized the particular look, the one of an ANBU commander on a mission. Most shockingly for most however, the orange book Kakashi that was seemingly to have glued to his hand was gone. I am glad you all found the time to come here, Kakashi spoke as he gazed over the group of assembled people he trusted explicitly after a long brainstorming session with the people he trusted. I am sure you are all aware about our new appointed Hokage had some skeletons in his closet. There were a few hesitant nods at this. I am afraid it will be more of a graveyard by the time we know the full truth however. He started to pace. Did any of you find it odd Tsunade turned traitor, he asked. A few more nods, less hesitant now. Yet the only one who could truly know on Konoha's side, Jiraiya, never returned, despite being the favored Hokage candidate after her. Now this is a heavy implication, but I am afraid it is not a groundless one. Who has not noticed the sudden increase of masked ANBU with black and white masks? We all suspected Danzo never completely disbanded his root program. Instead we find out he truly has a large private army. Large enough to give both the Raikage and Tsuchikage pause. He paused again for dramatic effect. Now where do all these people come from? He gestured to a pile of files he compiled. It seems our honorable Hokage has been plundering our orphanages. The Kyubi attack truly must have been a blessing for him, he implied the math. Suddenly parentless 3-year-olds would be emotionless 16-year-old drones now, a prime battle-ready age. The assembled ninja looked concerned now. Kakashi momentarily toyed with the idea to let the demon container issue out, but decided not to risk his momentum on a gamble. Danzo has always been a warhawk, who knows what he will do in this tense environment. It is clear that he has no ethics at all, even compared to our kind's more dirty jobs. If he remains in command, it might even be our own children who disappear into his dark clutches. Kakashi spoke fervently. He saw the consternation at what he was implying. Yes, we need to keep watch, yet we cannot act now, there are too few of us, and if I suspect about the Otokage is true, he somehow managed to avoid the assassination attempt. The Otokage did on him personally, the same woman who took out me, Enko, Kurenai, the two elders and most importantly, the third Hokage. He mocked thought. And for some reason, Danzo's considerable person army did nothing during this invasion. Either he knew, or decided to use it as an opportunity to advance his own cause. Now, do we want that kind of a person to lead the Leaf to the future? Always balancing on the edge of war, and other nations might have issues with us we are not aware of because of Danzo's Root's actions. So what do you want us to do, Kakashi? Guy asked, and inwardly Kakashi was glad that beneath his loud exterior, his self-proclaimed rival was as sharp as ever and timed his question perfectly. For now, we watch from the shadows. Danzo must be far stronger than we thought to survive the likes of the Otokage, or has some trick or technique to escape momentary death. We need to gather more friends and allies, as his private root army is too large for just us, and we need to hinder whatever progress he will try to inflict on the Leaf. This led to solemn nods, and soon the gathered band of ninja left, slinking into the shadows where they came from. Asuma and Guy staying behind on Kakashi's request. Guy, Asuma. I need your help. Kakashi spoke honestly. I need to get back to my old top condition. For that I need strong sparring partners. Guy smiled. Yash, I will get you back to top strength in a month, or else I will climb the Hokage mountain with one hand. Guy shouted with enthusiasm. Asuma looked unsure. I am not sure what I can help you with, but I will help where I can. Thanks, may the tree prosper. Kakashi intoned as the pair left. I have a bounty. Guren thought with surprise. She was always held at the back, or out of sight to be Kushina's ace. Furthermore, her nickname implied the enemy was well aware of his bloodline ability. We must have lucked out. Taki did not recognize me, she thought with worry, remembering the beehive of problems they created at their backs, and the enormous problem ahead of them. Now die so I can have your heads. Kakuzu demanded as he charged forward, forming hand signs as he went. Doton, Domu, he exclaimed before his visible skin on his arms turned brown. He leapt into the air towards the tree the group was standing on. They scattered, and with a flying kick he brought down the behind them tree. He immediately shot after Guren. Let's see whose armor is stronger. Kesho no Yoroi. Guren countered as she turned to fight, finishing her string of hand signs. Engaging Kakuzu in a punishing taijutsu fight, their respective armors holding up to the assaults. Guren managed to grapple with Kakuzu, holding him in place. Anko darted forward, seeing the opening she took no chances. Seniai to Joshu, she shouted, launching a horde of snakes towards Kakuzu. From his back suddenly a blast of fire erupted through the cloak with a katon, Tsukaku. The amount fire looked pitiful compared to the wall of snakes, until it hit the lead one. A large fireball erupted from the impact point, destroying the attack. A part of Kakuzu's cloak burned away, revealing 4 differently colored masks on his stitched back as he threw away Guren with his superior strength. We got a real freak show here. Anko muttered under her breath as she warily circled around Kakuzu. Fu, do you know any fire-based attacks? Naruto asked as he watched with Fu and Temari from the sidelines, all 3 of them unsure if they should interfere. The trio below clashed again. Anko launched a fire dragon towards Kakuzu, whose back blue mask spit out a river of water into the shape of a wall, absorbing the attack. Guren launched a barrage of crystal projectiles at the same time, but Kakuzu's armor blocked them. I only know a few water element attacks that I am not very good at. Fu added dourly as the trio clashed again, Kakuzu's superior strength showing, less afraid to show off despite the nearness of the village than Guren and Anko. We can't fight too long, we are going to draw attention. Temari voiced. The trio in the trees watched grimly, until Naruto had an idea. Attention is bad for both sides. But we can bluff our way through if have to when play our cards right. Naruto suddenly voiced, drawing surprised looks from Fu and Temari. That guy is to capture us, so if Fu and I both pump our tailed beast's chakra in the air, that will attract attention he cannot afford. Perhaps Taki and Konoha will kill him for us. He argued. Fu was unsure. Strategy was something she was not taught, just that she had to listen to orders. Temari nodded hesitatingly, agreeing with the logic. Well then, ready Fu? Naruto asked, and Temari resisted the urge to run. Despite turning a new leaf, demon containers going demon still scared her shitless. How many tails? Fu asked hesitatingly in response. Naruto blinked, realizing he had no clue how good Fu could control her bug's power. "How many can you handle?" he asked. Fu looked unsure. "Two," she replied after a moment of thought. Naruto was confused why she was so unsure about it until it hit him. They must have been telling her it isn't enough. He beamed a megawatt smile at her, unknowingly causing girl's stomach to feel funny again. "More than enough, let's do this," and in response, red chakra started to bubble around him. Fu followed shortly after. One tail formed, two tails formed. Naruto wanted to stop there, but he forgot a single, very important detail. Naruto had told whoever controlled Kyuubi was with Akatsuki. There was an Akatsuki member in front of Naruto. Kyuubi was not planning to let him go free and have its power used as a mere distraction. Kyuubi pushed another tail's worth of chakra, with its enormous bloodlust added up. Mortal concepts as restraint, strategy and limits left Naruto. And with a roar, he launched himself forward towards Kakuzu, whose fight halted when the fighting group felt the oppressive power of two-tailed beasts. Anko cursed as she saw a red blur accompanied with the sheer oppressive presence of a Bju, followed quickly by another. Fu initially did not want to fight, thinking it was only to draw attention, but a few choice words from Chome egged her into the fight. "I am not going to be a helpless princess," she roared back in her mind. "Well, show them, Fu." Chome cheered, throwing more fuel on the fire. Kakuzu cursed as he sensed the Bju's chakra light up the environment, becoming a beacon for everyone to investigate. He wanted to form hand signs to blow away the possessed demon container away, but Naruto was too close and too fast and gauged into his arm he raised in a hasty blocked. Kakuzu lashed out with his other hand, sending the cubified boy away, only for him to get a demonic chakra head but, courtesy from Fu who formed her tailed beast's horn crown on her top of her head before ramming it into Kakuzu's stomach, lifting him off the ground and sending him flying low over the ground. With a push of temporary chakra wings, Fu shot away before Kakuzu's rapid retaliating fireball could hit her, so focused on burning one of his menaces, he did not notice Guren running to intercept him as he slid backwards, forming hand signs as she went the moment she saw Fu go for the blow. A crystal spire, rising from the ground with shallow angle, tore through his lower back as he was impaled by his own momentum, destroying his lightning mask, skewering him through completely. Kyuubi, satisfied the enemy was killed, reined in its bloodlust, and retreated to the back of the seal, allowing Naruto to regain control as he prowled, prepared to launch himself at the man again. He immediately worked to push down his tails, successfully pulling in one before Kakuzu spoke, his voice filled rage. "You worthless," he roared. "Die." The entire group was startled that he was unaffected by the impalement. Despite being skewered, he rapidly formed hand signs before they could move to interfere. "Futon, Atsugai," he shouted. Air rapidly condensed around him, forming a shell around him and the impaling crystal. It quickly became visible as a white sheen, getting harder to see through. Anko, not trusting it, rapidly backpedaled, shouting, "Get away from him." Fu hesitated, glancing at Naruto who leaped back, two tails trailing his form. With two flaps of newly formed chakra wings, she shot away after him. The dome shimmered, and Guren managed to shout before it exploded. "Run eastward, do not fight him." The rest got cut off by the roar of the winds, who tore a crater and leveled the surrounding trees. Naruto and Fu were far enough and fast enough to leap away. Anko got caught up by the shockwave, but her flexibility she managed to right herself before smashing into a tree, and handily dodged the incoming debris. Temari had fully opened her fan upon seeing the formation of the shell, and with a roar, she sent her own powerful wind blast to counter the incoming shockwave, negating the worst of it because of her distance from Kakuzu. Guren managed to form a crystal shell around herself as she got tossed away, crashing through trees and bouncing through the forest. The moment the crystal shell grounded to a halt, Guren released it, and despite the disorientation, leapt into the trees to get a clear view of the sky. She roughly estimated the right direction, which was away from Kakuzu, and set off. Temari closed her fan after countering the shockwave, giving one more quick look before running away, and she wished she didn't. From his back, the masks came loose, some kind of black stuff forming bodies as the masked things dislodged the man from the impaling crystal. All her worries about regrouping fled her mind, and Temari ran as quickly as she could. Kakuzu cursed himself for thinking he only had to deal with his 2 marks while the Jinchuriki would wait as good pets to be retrieved. When the Kyubi brat charged in, he was surprised by the speed, and he was completely caught off guard by the Nanabai girl that came straight after him, allowing the cheap combo the crystal bitch managed to pull on him. His masks finally tore him free, and with a grunt of frustration he gathered the remnants of his cloak. Giving chase would be useless, the marks split up, and with the tailed beast's chakra in the air, it was a matter of time before Konoha and Taki would investigate. If he pushed on, he would reveal himself, something that would certainly anger the leader of the organization. Damn brat, must have been his plan. He ranted at the lost opportunity to gain money. Anko did not look to watch if the wind blast was some kind of final revenge attack or that the strength ninja could free himself. She knew she was helplessly outclassed, and with Guren shouting them to run, that was exactly what she planned to do. So only was worried about Guren and Temari, she was confident the 2 Jinchuriki got clear could carve their way through a small army if they had to. I just hope that Suna fangirl gets out safely. Kushina-sama will not be pleased if she dies. Anko thought as she sprinted through the woods. She knew with her northward direction she had a solid chance of running into trouble, but getting away from the "I don't care I got impaled" freak show took priority in Anko's mind in case he survived. After an hour of solid sprinting, Anko turned eastward. I am responsible for bringing the team together. The Kyubigaki can track in theory, but I doubt he has the knowledge how. I just hope the 3 kids stuck together. She shivered at the thought spending the entire night hunting for kids, with the possibility of the Shrank Freak Show and the Taki/Konoha forces hunting them too. Yeah, it better be Gaki United. Anko though with a scowl. To Anko's enormous disappointment, the Gakis had split up. Upon bending back, summoning tracking snakes as she went, Anko forgot she could send a messenger snake to Naruto, an embarrassing move she would never admit. She found Temari first, the girl moving relatively slowly and carefully. But without anything to wipe out her scent, Anko's snakes found her quickly. The pair resumed their journey, and soon found the trail of a fox boy and a bug girl. Naruto called to a halt. He knew at this pace they would reach the Taki/Odo border in another couple of hours, and he would be walking into the outer reaches of the border patrols. Why are we stopping? Fu asked. It was clear for Naruto she was still fired up. She doesn't seem to have a lot of experience, he mused to himself. They must have kept her in that shack. At least I went out on a few missions. Out loud he said. We are nearing the border. It is better if we can find the rest of the team before we try to cross it. Fu nodded, happy to follow his lead. Naruto bit his thumb and made a few hand signs, and in a poof of smoke a small set of snakes appeared. Explore the area and try to find Guren, Anko and Temari. He ordered, giving a short visual description afterwards. How am I supposed to know how Guren and Temari smell? He thought with a frown, one of the questions the snakes asked to find them. With a bit of glumness he realized he knew nothing about tracking aside from the very basics he got from the academy, another thing to learn. So much I don't know, he thought as he faced with another shortcoming. The pair settled down, making a small hidden camp to rest, eating some rations. Naruto made some shadow clones to keep watch while he recreated a seal tag he had used, trying to figure out why it was so much more powerful. Fu watched him for a few moments, before suddenly feeling bold and made her way over to him, resting her head on his shoulder and slowly relaxed against him. Naruto blinked in surprise, and froze, unsure what he was supposed to do. He decided to let her be, and carefully worked on recreating the tag without disturbing her. Suddenly was a sudden headache, and he received the memories of a clone that dispelled who saw Anko and Temari approach. The pair quickly found the camp, and Anko whistled, "You move quickly Gaki," she spoke loudly, startling Fu, who blushed bright red as she shot to her feet. Anko noticed the tag Naruto just finished. Planning to blow your way through Gaki? She asked with humor in her voice. Nah, I am trying to figure out why the explosion was so powerful. Naruto admitted. Anko grinned bloodthirstily. Figure it out quickly Gaki, I want all my explosive tags to have so much bang. Naruto chuckled. Yes ma'am, he droned. Anko nodded, pleased by the response. Did you send a message to Kushina-sama that you single-handedly blew up a hidden village? Naruto frowned. I don't think they did that much damage. Anko shrugged, not really caring. Perhaps, but it did some damage. Hand me some paper and lend me that brush. Kushina-sama might be able to exploit this opening. Naruto did as he was told, but internally he was wondering if his tags truly could have done so much damage. He heard a snake hiss something he couldn't hear clearly before poofing away, indicating the message had been sent. Back in Taki it was chaos. Naruto's explosive tags, far more powerful by circumstances they had any right to be, tore through the rocks and roots surrounding the shrine, cracking the bedrock itself, allowing the water from the lake into the cave system beneath. The water initially spread slowly and away from the group, but as the currents tore the paths wider, more and more water poured through, unsettling the roots who started to shift under the massive tree's weight. The ninja of Taki started to pull together by the time Guren's group left the cave system, and formed a plan to counter the central's tree-threading fall. The tags left behind by Guren and Anko went off, going off earlier than planned. The unexpected explosion sent Taki's forces into disarray again. Thinking they were attacked, they abandoned their plans and set off to fight the non-existent enemy. By the time Shibuki regained control of his forces, it was too late. Unseen by the ninja, the tree had reached its tipping point, and its massive weight slowly started to pull some roots free from the lake bed and bedrock, and tore up or crushed others. Initially the inhabitants thought they had lucked out when the tree started its majestic descent, heading towards the abandoned sectors, heading close to where Fu's abandoned shack was. However, despite the lake drainage, there was plenty of water for a respectable wave-off displaced water that destroyed buildings nearest to the lake. The massive canopy splintered as it hit the ground, sending normal tree-sized debris all over the place, the walls of the valley allowing the debris to rebound, ensuring no place was unharmed. The majority of the ninja forces were quick enough to avoid being crushed, impaled, or killed in another way. The civilians had time to hide, but with the majority of the cave system now flooded, there was no space for the people to hide. The ninja tried to protect them, but the earthen walls they could erect were pitiful compared to the forces of nature. The ancient tree branches hardened by the nature chakra at the roots and sheer age broke through them, killing the helpless civilians behind the barriers. When the fallen tree finally settled into its new resting place, Takigakure was devastated like a small ninja war had torn through it. Nearly no building was undamaged, dead civilians lay scattered, joined by the odd ninja too slow to avoid the danger. Despite the massive devastation of his village, Shibuki and the senior ninja had other worries. They were aware that the tree was part of the genjutsu seal array that was crafted around the valley's wall's top, and with the sheer amount of debris, ignoring the lack of the tree, they were certain the array that had hidden Taki for nearly a century was damaged badly. They could only hope that their Konoha allies had not heard the sheer amount of noise the tree's fall had made, and that whatever or whoever the cause was of the explosion that triggered it was unaware of the damage they did. Shibuki himself had another worry. He could not find the Konoha root team, nor find Fu. He did not make the connection. Far too worried how to explain to Danzo that a team of his died in his village, his mind already going through the ways he could fake intelligence the root team had left, dying somehow at Oto's hands. How impossible it sounded to Shibuki himself. Kushina was surprised when the messenger snake appeared. By her own estimations the group only could be a day inside Taki itself, hardly enough time to bluff their way past to talk with the Nanabai container. That could only mean they failed to gain entry and were reporting a mission failure, or something interesting, or worse, bad, had happened. That they managed to convince the demon container in less than an hour and executed some major sabotage was the last thing she had on her list of possible events. But Kushina was a talented leader, and immediately sent out orders, sending a limited amount from her reserves eastward, and alerting her eastern border forces to prepare for war. She had estimated Taki's response correctly. In half a day it was clear something big had happened, and the limited forces that opposed her own thinned out further. On a gamble, she informed her own spies embedded in Iwa's intelligence structure that something bad had happened, hoping she could finally goad Inoki into action. She succeeded beyond her expectations. A handful of hours after she had released the information into her network, one of the spies returned information that IWA was rapidly mobilizing its own border forces, the old goat making it quite clear he was going to give Konoha a whooping in revenge of the damage the Yellow Flash did. With some quick mental calculations, she sent out a fresh set of orders after examining the maps she had on Taki and Odo-controlled lands. She did not have the forces to grab too much territory. However, the heavy broken land between Odo and Taki, some calling it cursed land thanks to the ancient remnants of large creatures you could find there, was far more taxing on her forces than a map would suggest. Deep valleys, large tunnel systems and dense forest gobbled up troops without really protecting it to her standards. Thankfully, nobody hostile noticed the possible gaping hole in her lines. And despite owning more, relative worthless land, it would actually free up some of her forces as the rough land of the Land of Waterfalls was tame compared to where her eastern line was now. The extra free forces would be handy if her scouts indeed made contact with the leader of Kiri's rebel forces. Kushina's predictions were off by 2 hours, but otherwise she had estimated Inoki's plan to invade Taki quite well. Despite the vagueness of what happened to Taki itself, it was clear something horrible was happened, as Taki withdrew more troops than expected to repair and re-establish their village and hidden cave routes while gently attempting to discourage curious Konoha and root forces from following them to help with whatever mysterious problem there was. Inoki sent his own son, Kitsuchi, to lead Iwa's forces. Under Kitsuchi leadership, IWA troops assaulted the joint Konoha/Taki line near sea, and more land inward, while across the line Iwa's forces made more aggressive movement to tie down the Konoha/Taki troops. The gamble worked, and after a day of heavy fighting Kitsuchi's forces destroyed the blob of troops caught between the pincer, allowing IWA free movement into the Land of Waterfalls. IWA ninja flowed through the opening while Kitsuchi personally led a division to roll along the line while ordering breakthroughs further south, attempting to envelop more portions of Konoha's troops. The gamble failed, however. The Nara commander in control of Konoha's forces organized and ordered a well-structured retreat from the approaching IWA horde, forcefully commanding Taki's confused ninja to follow along, retreating southwest direction as he fell back. Willing to breach Taki's trust not to search for Takigakure to have a fallback point, unaware of the horrible state the village was in. On the east side of the Land of Waterfall, Odo's forces started to make their own move. Kushina's well-drilled troops rapidly cut their way through the thin Taki line, the odd Konoha squad interspersed between, unable to meaningfully halt the advance. The eastward line did not have a brilliant commander in command, not that it would have mattered. The limited reserves Kushina had sent out included the Sound Four, who had rapidly smashed their way through the line, heading for the area they had suspected the commander was holed up. Once again Kushina's well-spread intelligence network paid off, and they were right on the spot they predicted to be, Taiyuya quickly slaying the hapless commander and his second-in-command, leaving the eastward troops headless and ready for the slaughter. Odo forces slowly advanced after the destruction of the Taki troops, securing the ground as they went. They made towards the new Odo border as Kushina had planned, disarming any traps Taki and Konoha troops left behind and exterminating pockets of survivors who tried to be saboteurs. Enko had the group sit tight as the conflict erupted, and even slightly retreat westward not to get caught up, still not having found Guren, unaware that the crystal-wielding woman already had passed the border and was back in Odo territory, assisting the Odo commander in the assault while trying to find the rest of the group. As Odo started to move forward, they were inspected, but before they could be interrogated Guren swooped in, and started to drag the group towards the main base, Kushina making it quite clear she was fairly interested in what exactly happened, but glad that they survived their unexpected encounter with the man in black with red clouds and succeeded their mission. While Odo started reinforcing their new border, the Sound Four led a strike group deeper into Taki territory, using the information Gurren had given to see the results of Naruto's handiwork themselves if they could, and if given the opportunity, rob anything of value they could get their hands on. IWA assault pushed on relentlessly, and on the northern reaches soon crashed against new-founded Odo's borders, sooner than Kushina had anticipated, unaware how quickly and efficiently Konoha had retreated from the northern parts after the initial confusion, taking Taki ninja with them as they went. After the initial clash, IWA troops quickly backpedaled, informing Kitsuchi of the unexpected development. After a long deliberation, while lower commanders advised for or against opening a second front, Kitsuchi decided to play safe and form an opposing line, while sending a report to his father with the request for advice. He personally did not care that Odo took the perceived chance to grab some of Taki's holdings, although it was more than he wanted to give. They did indirectly save IWA lives by taking care of the troops on their side, and they clearly already decided what land they wanted. He wondered if the same tactic he used on Konoha would work on the Odo line. From the reports he had, it was clear they were on par with Konoha forces, something that was unexpected. Minor villages' forces usually inferior compared to the ones of major villages. Kitsuchi was unsure about Odo's strengths, and although he was confident they could beat Odo in the long run, Konoha could use the opening to severely harm IWA. He knew Danzo was no fool, and would milk the Odo/IWA conflict for all it was worth before destroying Odo and engaging IWA, resulting in most likely another drawn-out war as Odo's supposedly ally. Sand would stop bothering Konoha in any way or form in order to avoid their wrath, perhaps even launching their own opportunistic attacks towards IWA. He just hoped the cranky old man in the office thought along the same lines, otherwise they were in for it the long run, the thing that happened in Taki becoming the catalyst for the Fourth Shinobi War. The Raikage did not sit still. The moment the report hit his desk that combat had erupted in Taki, he made an aggressive probing attack towards Odo and Konoha borders, each through the Land of Frost and the Land of Springs, but in both cases the troops were repulsed violently with heavy losses. Both Odo and Konoha route troops unafraid to pursue and chased the troops back to the Land of Lightning, killing any stragglers they could get their hands on. This resulted in another extended bout of skirmishing that worried Kushina greatly, but with some deft maneuvering and strict orders she managed to make Konoha bear the worst of the three-way fight before Kumo forces sulked back to their borders as both the daimyos of the Land of Frost and the Land of Spring started lodging complaints to the daimyo of the Land of Lightning for allowing Kumo to use their lands as a battleground. Unwilling to lose the friendship, trade and blood ties, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning reined back the Raikage the best he could. Angered, his chances of conquest were ruined. The Raikage refocused all his available energy on finding any links to the ones who took out Yujito, the Nibi container. Danzo once again proved that he was true to his own credo, and a better ninja than most in his own mind by not snarling or raging against the seemingly endless negative reports from the different front lines. The Taki situation seemed to completely collapse on itself, only the brilliance of the Nara commander preventing the situation to completely turning to a self-destructive route. He regretted sending the Nara clan head, and the finest Konoha commander to salvage the situation at the Land of Rivers, only to find out later that Suna seemed to have stopped their slow advance. Perhaps their best could have done better in Taki, but there was nothing he could do now. At least the minor groups like Prajna Group are not assaulting Konoha assets, but the question is for how long, he mused, wondering which assets he could use to deal with them in a final manner. He suddenly frowned. The ones loyal to that old fool and rival Hiruzen are staying to quite. Do those emotional fools realize the importance of the situation, or are they planning something? He asked himself. He had some odd reports of a gathering of sorts, but the numbers and who was involved was unknown. The few spotted perchance by civilians loyal to him were unsure on who exactly the ninja involved were. Danzo wished he could drag all the loyalists either into Root or TNI, but the TNI division were firmly in the hands of Ibiki, Enko's fate still unknown, but presumed dead. And the division was squarely loyal to the third first, Ibiki second and Danzo, the current Hokage last. So sending otherwise loyal ninja to find out if they were planning something against Danzo was a foolish move. He could send them to a root base for interrogation, but it was risky, Danzo thought. Some of the loyal ninja were quite famous, like Hitaki Kakashi. The man could have been a problem if he wasn't so emotionally weak, living in the past. Danzo mused as he thought about Kakashi. Writing off the copy ninja as a threat, he let his mind spin freely who could be responsible for a possible movement inside Konoha against him because they believed the third's foolish ideals. Shinkiro frowned as he read the last reports. Suna's attempts to slowly conquer more of the land of rivers were stymied nearly constantly now. Konoha send a Nara. One of their best by the looks of it, he thought after a moment. None of the reports indicated a troop surge of sorts, but casualties were rising due traps and brilliant plans. He thought for a while on how to break open the situation before letting loose a curse. There is no way I can outthink a Nara, he thought angrily. He briefly considered unleashing Gaara on the brilliant mind, using an enormous amount of unsubtle force to break the deadlock. But Gaara was not an unknown factor, and Shinkiro realized the Nara most likely had a counter-plan should he exactly do that. Furthermore, the boy would complain he had to go all out on unworthy opponents. A snake suddenly poofed near him, and with a raised eyebrow he took the message, thanking the creature before it disappeared again in a puff of smoke. It was a message from Kushina, detailing situation in Taki. He was a bit unhappy his daughter went along with the mission, but it was clear from the message she was unharmed, so he let it slide. With IWA now in conflict with Konoha, he could perhaps send more forces without attracting undue attention. At the same time, Kushina might need me to be able to pressure IWA should they push westward towards Oto, he realized with some annoyance. Perhaps I should be happy with the gains I have now, he conceded to himself after a while, suspecting that was Danzo's plan by turning the land of rivers into a meat grinder for both forces. Neither could really take it, but Danzo had the advantage with the unknown route numbers, something that in its own way, undid quite a bit of damage the invasion inflicted. He sighed. It seems Suna is stuck for now. Shinkiro called for Baki, and the pair soon started to plan out how they could solidify their gains, and what they could give away to prevent the Nara from having weak points to strike and cause more casualties. Both liberally cursed the genius clan while they planned. After long deliberation, which some of the strategists under Inoki's command presumed meant they were going to initiate a three-way war inside Taki, Inoki decided to go along with his son's recommendation, and soon snapped out general orders to form a line along the strategic geography, creating a fairly large no man's land between IWA and Oto. I have underestimated the new village, Inoki thought grumpily as his strategists worked their way through detailed maps they had from the previous wars, intent to find a strong points they could make in the land IWA could use to form a solid front. To think they managed to train the nine-tailed Jinchuriki the extent it could damage a village that badly and somehow smuggle it into Taki proper. He mused on, slightly miffed the upstart village managed to do something IWA failed in 3 ninja wars. Or did Konoha do the preparation, and is the supposedly family connection between the container and this Otokage true? Inoki frowned, unseen by the rest of the strategy room. I need to expand on information network somehow. It was a fluke the network picked up on Taki's distress. I shan't rely on luck. He saw one of the men make a mistake. Lack of experience, he noted idly, and he rose energetically. His back disagreed, and with a loud crack and "Arg, my back," he joined the conversation. Asuma bit back a curse as the young Inoshikacho trio nearly captured him during the training session because he was daydreaming and worrying again. After the horrible battle in Konoha, the death of his father and many others, he pursued Kurenai with new vigor, reminded painfully of his own mortality. However, the woman was hurt badly during the invasion. From what he could find out from her when she nearly drank herself to death was that the stab wound she had suffered from the Otokage took away her chances to bear children, and was mortified he would break up with her because of that. He would be lying if that did not disappoint him, but he found her love far more important, and they could always adopt a child later. He knew with war looming on the horizon, some rumors already saying it had broken out in the land of Waterfall between a three-way all-out battle between Konoha, Iwa, and Oto. Adoption will have to wait after the Fourth Shinobi War if that is true. He thought, before hastily ducking, preventing a kunai giving him an extra breathing hole. "Pay attention, sensei," a girl shouted cockily. He scowled, before moving to counter-attack, rapidly throwing a chubby boy into the trees, before dancing around a shadow trying to end snared while he lunged for the cocky blonde. A minute later the team lay knocked out. Those rumors must be false. Asuma said to himself. They are far from ready for the hell that war is. While war erupted inside the land of waterfalls, the group responsible for igniting the powder keg were nearing home, one eager to meet her new home, the rest happy that with all the danger they got themselves into, they got out relatively unharmed. Guren was worried however, fearing Kushina's wrath for encountering Akatsuki and then losing her eyes on Naruto. She was right, Kushina would be angry, but she was not the target. Kushina smiled as she saw Guren and her team enter her office. As she laid her eyes on her son, glad he was indeed unharmed, despite knowing that through Guren's very short initial report. She noted with interest that an unknown girl, the Nanabai container, followed Naruto more closely than most would find decent, and suspected if the girl would lean against Naruto, he would hug her without thought. Interesting. Kushina thought, momentarily removing the entire Taki situation and mission from her head as she quickly analyzed how the girl's interest in her son, combined with her background, would make her a more suitable woman for her Naruken than his current interest. I will need to work soon on that, Kushina reminded herself, before the breakup becomes too painful for him and he refuses to do it. The friendship between him and Hinata is very important for him. If she could, a disgusted expression would have made it to her face. After their initial conversation, Kushina had reeled herself back later on, thinking she was too harsh on the poor Hyuga girl, so she spent some time observing the Hinata. However, the more she watched or heard, the more displeased she was. She disapproved heavily of her shyness, only showing some backbone when her sister was involved. She analyzed the mint green-haired girl, her stance stuck between outwardly cocky, but Kushina's expert eyes saw the girl was nervous. They resisted the urge to raise an eyebrow. Naruken likes shy girls, she thought with a bit of disapproval. She slammed her mind back to the Taki situation. Report, she demanded. Guren started to relay what happened. Kushina frowned. Her spies had missed that the target team traveled so close. Granted, she did not have that much info on them, but it was another disappointment. She listened with interest how easily Guren talked her way to Fu, and how Naruto managed to convince Fu. The report was shortly interrupted as Kushina confirmed Naruto's promises would be honored, and promised the girl to train her herself if she wanted to. Something that surprised the rest of the team, but Naruto was glad he could spend more time with Fu then. The report continued, and Kushina's interest peaked when Naruto explained it was most likely natural chakra that the hero's water was made from, and she was glad he had the foresight to bring a sample. When they described the explosive tags, and their results, Kushina frowned slightly, but bade them to continue. The underground battles did not pique her interest, but it was clear on her face she was not happy how the team dealt with Akatsuki member. Guren fidgeted at the displeased look on her master's face, until she realized it was not aimed at her, but Naruto. Naruto was nervous, knowing full well his mother would chew him out for fighting Kakuzu, but was ready to defend his reasons. To his surprise, Kushina signaled Guren to continue after a moment of thought. At the end of the report, she dismissed the team, telling Guren to come back in an hour and for Naruto to stay. Fu glanced back confused, but obeyed the order as Enko guided her out. Naruto stood alone in the office, ready for his mother, and was subsequently caught off guard when she asked, "Could you show me the seal you used to destroy the shrine?" she asked in a kind tone. Kushina glared at the seal Naruto showed, the same one he had made in Taki when trying to figure out why it had so much power. She knew she hadn't taught him the symbols involving delays of any kind, so when she heard in the briefing Naruto had made time-delayed explosive tags, she thought he was further with his self-study than she thought. Then she saw the seal, on itself, with the limited knowledge Naruto had, it was quite genius work, using a combination of nature chakra absorption and conversion seals, normally used for seals that need to work for a long time, like alarms. Or impediment seals, to charge the seal, exact timing made by another combination of temporary chakra overflow symbols and chakra hindering symbols, before it all spiraled to the center to the explosion symbol, before which all the hindering and overflow was released, causing a bang. Add nature chakra and the devil's luck to the mix, and you are then brining down enormous trees. So yes, it would work, but it worked clumsily, and worse, it was untested when it was used. Naruto could have easily blown himself or the team up. His theory why the bang was bigger than expected made sense with the setup, but she suspected it was dumb luck that the seals didn't overload and explode in his face the moment he activated them, and judging from his rather smug expression, he hadn't realized that. I vowed to myself to never hit my children, but I don't see how I could otherwise make it clear to him he has been very lucky far too often lately. Seems like my lessons about cockiness are truly not sticking with just words. Kushina thought with a bit of despair as she walked around the desk. Smack! Kushina slap struck like a lightning strike. You idiot, she roared, towering over the stunned boy. You could have easily blown yourself or the others up with this seal. What if the nature chakra seeped through the entire village? That would have triggered the seals far quicker. What if the nature chakra was more potent than those barrier symbols could contain? She shouted into Naruto's stunned face. Aye. Naruto stuttered, still stunned by being hit by his mother and the sudden change of her mood. You have been far too reckless, Kushina continued as she stepped back and started to pace in front of the gob-smacked boy. It started with that fight against the root agents with Guren, but you had her to cover you so I overlooked it. Then you get cocky and ruined the chance to blow up the Hokage tower, she continued to rant, ignoring Naruto's flinch. And then you picked a fight with Tayuya against Kakashi. She glared into his shocked eyes. But by dumb luck you managed to get out of it all unharmed, so I just berated you, hoping it would stick. She pressed the seal he had made into his face. And did you listen to me? She demanded. No, mother. Naruto squeaked, feeling extremely tiny how his mother harshly pointed out his mistakes, and how he ignored her gentle attempts to point them out. And then fighting an Akatsuki agent. What did I tell you when you would encounter an Akatsuki agent? She waited a beat, giving Naruto an opening to respond, who stayed silent. Well, she all but growled. To run and leave the team behind, since they were not a target. Naruto rapidly responded. And what did you do? She demanded. I fought using Kyuubi's chakra and dragged Fu into it, mother. He responded timidly. Kushina felt the anger she had worked up seep out of her as she took in the visage of her son, who looked miserably at the ground. Did it stick now? She wondered. She kneeled before him, gently lifting his chin to look into her eyes. Now Naruto, what have you been lately? She asked softly. He was silent for a moment, thinking it over. That I have been lucky and stupid. She nodded. You have been indeed. Now what do you do if you run into another Akatsuki agent? I run, mother. Naruto responded. She nodded again and gave him a hug. I am worried about you, Naruto, your luck won't last. She said softly into his ear. Sorry for worrying you, mother. Naruto replied softly. Then start thinking beforehand instead on your feet, and don't use experimental seals, I warned you how dangerous it is. She berated him softly. Yes, mother. Please, Naruto. She pleaded. I spent 13 years getting you back, don't kill yourself by being reckless. I can't take that. Naruto flinched heavily at that, guilt welling up at the words. I think he got it. Kushina thought, suddenly feeling lost what she was supposed to do next. Well, shall I teach you how to make a proper delayed explosive tag tomorrow? She offered to change the subject, deciding to add. Despite the risks, your work was quite good with your limited knowledge, showing your potential. Giving a praise and a reminder. Thank you, mother, I'd like to learn that, Naruto replied formally, drawing an unseen frown from Kushina, who was unhappy he was still so formal with her. Unaware how deep her son was lost in his thoughts. Good, go to your room, she finished lamely, realizing she hadn't thought what she would do after making her son realize his mistakes. Yes, mother. Naruto spoke softly, before quickly making it out of her office. Kushina sighed, worry gnawing at her that she had harmed the good relationship with her son, yet at the same time not knowing another way to get her son off, what she perceived as a suicidal course. With a heavy sigh, she sank into her chair, and waited for Duran to return to ask for more details about certain points. She was disturbed that Duran had made it into a bingo book, while Kushina was unaware of that fact until she was told in the short report. Hinata went through the gentle fist katas without much motivation, keeping a slightly jealous eye at her younger sister who was happily chatting with Yukimaru. The long light brown-haired boy with those odd magenta eyes had captured her younger sister's interest. Hinata felt slightly jealous that Hanabi without shame or fear of rejection dragged the quiet and gentle boy around. Using her supposed fear of enclosed spaces, something Hinata was sure she had gotten over with, to spend every free moment she had with the boy. Yukimaru, being the kind and gentle boy he was, couldn't deny the young Hyuga girl. His adoptive mother Duran had made it quite clear how to treat a lady. Hinata sighed. I could be so assertive with Naruto-kun. She thought. She had heard something bad happened in the land of waterfalls, the same country Naruto had a mission in. I hope he is all right. She thought, unaware he had already returned. Kushina was worried Naruto stayed distant to her the few days after her scolding, afraid she pushed him away. She wished she had more time to talk to him, but the erupting war in the land of waterfalls demanded most of her attention. And only in the few short lessons she could give she had really time to talk to him, although she noted he stopped protesting her slipping into his bed and baths when she could. Unknown to her, Naruto only spent the night after replaying the conversation in his head, and came to the painful conclusion his mother was absolutely right. He however had no clue how to approach the subject with her, and kept a polite distance while he struggled with himself. Now aware of his faults he spent a lot of time into training, completing the first stage of wind manipulation with Temari's help, who was glad she was doing what she was supposed to do, and peeved it seemed she would be stuck into Odo, the erupting conflict making the long journey far too risky. Instead of moving on to the second stage of training, he requested from Temari to learn a wind jutsu that could be used in enclosed spaces, but an embarrassed Temari admitted that was something she intended to learn when she came home. So he continued with the second step of homing his affinity, cutting increasingly large rocks in two while Naruto's mind whirled on how he could obtain jutsu that did not need a lot of space to work like his great breakthrough or chakra chains. This train of thought made him realize he nearly forgot to search out Tsunade to learn more about traditional medicine, so he could threat his wounded comrades on the field. In the land of waterfalls, the relentless assault of IWA on Konoha continued, pushing the Konoha lines further and further down south. At the same time, IWA launched an assault on Takigakure itself, but a combination of booby traps and a concentration of Taki and Konoha troops repelled the attack. For the same reasons, Odo's attempt to infiltrate Takigakure failed, and the only information they managed to gather was that the massive tree that hid the village was gone, but could not tell how much damage was done to the place itself, or how many forces Takigakure had before they were driven off. IWA encircled the village, squashing it between their own and Odo's front lines while pushing further and further south. The Konoha line fell back under the expert leadership, harrying the IWA forces as they gave ground. On the northern borders troops were rushed to form a new line slightly into the land of fire. The orderly retreat merged with the reinforced Fire Country line. Hours after the chasing IWA forces crashed into the new defensive line. The Konoha forces bent and in some places nearly buckled, but in the end repelled the IWA assault, inflicting horrible casualties while suffering heavily themselves. The night set in, and night raids lit up the night. Sky. Danzo's route troops showed in surprising numbers for both IWA and Konoha. The emotionless agents showed their strength, and the few that heard Kakashi's message, or spread it those they trusted saw validity in his claims. Kakashi himself was in the land of grass, aiding Kusagakure ninja against IWA incursions, sent soon after the failed battle in order to divert Konoha strengths away from the area in the hope that the battle next day would go in their favor. Kusa, who usually used a mix of diplomacy, blackmail and political insight to drawn directly into conflict, simply did not have the time to execute their ploys, the sudden collapse of Taki taking them by surprise, compounded by the overly aggressive assault doctrine Inoki had set should they lose momentum, having suspected that Konoha would hinder them from getting into fire country proper. For Kakashi meant a series of painful near déjà vus. But his newfound will, and much greater strength since the last war, he kept his promise to himself true. He managed to keep the troops under his command safe and successfully stopped Iwa's raids in the lands of grass. To Danzo's and Inoki's surprise, Odo forces along the rest of the Land of Fire's northern borders kept their peace. Unknown to both old men, Kushina had their own plans, and none of them involved getting into fights with either major village in the short term. Unable to learn on time that their gambit failed, IWA forces launched another ferocious attack the next day. Backed by Danzo's route agents, Konoha counterattacked, intent to break Iwa's front, who rushed ahead to retake enough of the land of Waterfall to free their comrades stuck in the hidden village. For a few days the borderlands, including the civilian villages caught in between, became an extended battleground, ninjas from both sides making advances past the enemy's lines and attempting to destroy supplies, kill commanders or lay traps for possible reinforcements. At the end of the second day, it became clear for the Nara commander that breaking the back of the assault would not work within the time frame he set himself to free the surrounded troops, well aware that it was a matter of time before a second wave of IWA troops would arrive. He decided to take a well-informed gamble, and assembled a team to send a message to the embattled troops in Takigakure. Unfortunately for him, Kushina had managed to slip in several infiltrators, using the dead from the chaotic conflict to plant new agents. A few were caught, and subsequently committed suicide, but they were marked as IWA infiltrators as Kushina had planned. One of them caught information of the plan, and informed Kushina. Although a few Konoha commanders found it odd there were so many attempts, they chalked it up to Iwa's backstabbing nature, only Danzo upon receiving the report suspecting more from the slippery Odo leader. Kushina, seeing the chance to obtain more information on the hero's water, something she saw as a possible accelerant for a certain experiment, prepared another strike team, once again the Sound 4 leading it. As she expected, the Konoha troops managed to punch through the chaotic battlefield, and ran between the rough Odo/IWA lines behind the battleground to avoid interception from either side. Kushina graciously gave the troops the space they needed. The strike team she had assembled struck the night of the arrival of the team while they were gathering everybody to leave. Dressed in IWA outfits with the expected gear, a lightning strike launched into the city proper, using the information gathered from the first failed raid to avoid the booby traps around the valley's edge. Odo suffered comparatively heavy losses, but Kushina's main objective, the information on how to make heroes' water, was obtained in the package of a village elder, who would break after a few months of torture. The ploy succeeded initially, but afterwards, once they returned safely behind Konoha lines, Shibuki realized Odo pulled a fast one on them based on where the troops came from and how easily the Konoha troops made it towards Taki, but the exit was a lot more violent, and started to suspect where Fu really might be. That still left him the question how they entered Taki in the first place. However, he knew he was going to have a chat with Danzo despite his reluctance not to, certain the fault did not lay with Taki. After the morning full of training his wind affinity, Naruto set out to find Tsunade. As he walked through the hallways of the underground base, he saw a familiar mop of gray hair enter the armory, and he picked up the pace. As he expected, he saw the familiar form of Kabuto walk towards the IWA section of the armory, where all the recovered and repaired IWA equipment was stored. "Hey Kabuto," Naruto called, gaining the attention of the man, who turned to meet him. Hello Naruto-kun, what have I told you about gaining people's attention in public places? He asked with a smile. Naruto grinned, sorry Kabuto-san, he replied with a healthy amount of cheek. Kabuto sighed dramatically, what would your mother think of those manners? He asked. Considering she wants me to call her mom, in any situation, I don't think she cares very much. Naruto replied with a larger grin, skipping over the fact he was nervous to talk to his mother at the moment. All those years wasted, Kabuto mock cried. How are you? I have not seen you since the invasion, Naruto asked more seriously. Kabuto chuckled, I was finally having a break until a certain someone decided to blow up Taki, he said with amusement in voice. Naruto winced for a moment, before he laughed sheepishly. Would you believe me if I said I wasn't planning that? Kabuto mocked a thinking pose. No, I don't, replied after his thinking. Naruto grasped his heart and mocked pain. You hurt my feelings Kabuto, Naruto joked. The pair chuckled. I would love to talk Naruto-kun, but my schedule is rather tight. Kabuto said as he started to walk towards the IWA section again. You are going into IWA? Naruto asked. Kabuto nodded, well, be safe, Naruto could only say. I will do my best to stay safe. Kabuto replied with a smirk. But the enemy might object. Bah, you are too ugly to die Kabuto, Naruto shot back, eliciting a laugh from the gray-haired man. Naruto smiled as he gathered his tools, hoping he would speak with his friend again soon. Those thoughts brought another wince, he was so absorbed in what his mother had told him and improving himself, he hadn't made time to see Hinata. He frowned for a moment wondering why the girl hadn't sought him out, if Kabuto knew that he was back from blowing up Taki as he put it, surely the girl had heard. He shrugged, he would find out why, for all he knew the girl could be on a mission. He walked out of the armory, intent to find Swanda. Pain gazed over the rainy village on top of his tower as Zetsu disappeared into the darkness behind him. The news that Kakuzu brazenly engaged an Oto team alone and lost, but survived would be minor news alone, that the team contained not one, but two demon containers changed it however. It meant that the Nanobai container was no longer with Taki, another delay in his plans. With the outbreak of war he decided to let his organization lay low, and as soon he had the sign Sanbai was nearly reformed, they could continue the hunt, hitting the isolated containers, Nanobai, Ichibi and Rokubi first, before moving on the containers in countries aware of them. That plan was now ruined now. Again Oto ruins my plans. Pain thought annoyed as he slowly started to plot ways to get some kind of payback on the village that has thrown his well-crafted plan into disarray further. He shook his head, it was pointless to, he needed to focus on keeping AIM safe, that was the last he could do for his friend, the same friend whose body he now controlled. How would not let the great nations use AIM as their stomping grounds again? After finding the captain of the guard, and slapping himself inwardly for not asking Kabuto, he walked towards the office Tsunade was working in. Although he was slightly puzzled by the look of pity the man shot him before he left. He wondered how the busted Senju woman was doing and felt slightly guilty he had not tried harder to connect to the woman when they traveled back. Tsunade was silent and standoffish. He chalked up Duo the unpleasant revelations she had to go through, her apprentice, Shizun was friendly enough. Naruto saw a long black-haired girl running away in tears from the room he knew Tsunade was in, the guard outside sighing as he saw the girl run away. Was that kin? Naruto asked himself as he turned back around to walk into the room. Passing by a purple-haired girl sitting forlornly next to a guard, her face bandaged. Don't bother to ask for training or healing, she bites anyone who asks. The guard spoke. Not turning towards Naruto as he strode past into the room. Inside, he saw an exasperated Shizun standing as she watched Tsunade grab a new bottle and drink directly from it, multiple empty bottles spread around the desk she was working at. Papers lying everywhere without apparent organization. Tsunade saw Naruto, what do you want brat, she spoke rudely. Naruto frowned, between the crying girl, the girl waiting outside clearly needing her help, the guard's words and now Tsunade's rather unpleasant greeting, his temper flared and he returned snidely, I was looking for the world's best medic, but instead I found a drunken old hag. Tsunade smashed the bottle on the desk, drenching the papers on top. What was that brat? She shouted as she rose to her feet. I think you heard me well enough, old hag, I was looking for the best medic around. He bit back, his own temper flaring. He ignored the frantic look that entered Shizen's eyes. Pa, and why were you looking for me, brat? Training. Tsunade shot back, cracks appearing in the desk. I was planning to ask for. Don't count on it, you spoiled brat, you might be Kushina's son, but that gets you no favors from me. Naruto blinked. Spoiled brat, he asked himself, his temper flaring higher. You are the spoiled brat here, hag. He growled out. Freeloading on my mother's goodwill. The desk cracked, and Tsunade marched through she made the attempt to grab Naruto's clothing, but Kyuubi's red chakra shroud, responding to Naruto's anger, prevented that, burning her hand. Ha, like you are doing anything better, Tsunade hollered back, towering over Naruto. Girl, probably stumble over your feet in worship and all the jonin try to teach you things to get in your mother's favor. Describing your own childhood in Konoha as a senju? Naruto responded, inwardly he was wondering why the fox was lending its chakra while not speaking. Tsunade lashed out with her fist, Naruto barely managed to jump away, the floor cracked under Tsunade's fist. You have gotten rusty if a genin could dodge, you old hag. He taunted. The second swing was blocked, sending Naruto into the wall. He pulled him out like nothing had happened. What the hell is your problem anyways? He roared. Shut up, brat, you know nothing. Tsunade roared back. So this is what you want to do? Lash out to anyone who needs you help? Sit on your craggy old ass hurting everyone who wants to stop suffering? Naruto asked. You know nothing about suffering. I know nothing. Nothing. Naruto roared back, his voice getting deeper as the shroud got darker. A second tail sprouted. You know nothing, as he shot forward, intent to rend and tear. Tsunade handily dodged, but the flailing red chakra prevented her to counter. I grew up hated for something my father cursed me with. Naruto ranted, rushing again. Despite her drunken state, Tsunade was avoiding Naruto again, but the clearance she had was significantly smaller. She tried to work her chakra around to fight the alcohol in her system. She saw in the corner of her eye her apprentice was unsure how to calm down the angered demon container. While you were drinking your sorrows away, shaming those who loved you, I was suffering thanks to the Sandame's stupidity. Naruto roared as he shot off the wall, his claws dragging along the ground carving marks into it. As he got close he slashed upward, sending debris towards the backward jumping Tsunade. She ignored the flying rocks, and shot forward as she landed, punching down on the boy who was on all fours, but he rapidly darted away, her attack hitting the ground and splitting the floor apart. The pair stared at each other as they recovered, Tsunade in a stance ready to crack the earth again, Naruto hunched like a feral beast about to pounce. What is going on here? Kushina demanded, standing at the entrance of the now wrecked room. A squad of nervous troops behind her. She shot Naruto a stern look. Withdraw Kyuubi's chakra now. She demanded. His mother's commanding voice snapped Naruto out of his anger with Tsunade, and complied, pulling back the tails quickly. With as much dignity he could muster, he stood up and walked towards to the exit, quickly bowing to his mother saying, My apologies, Kushina-sama. Drawing a surprised look from his mother before he walked past her towards his room. Kushina quickly weighed her options, but decided to let him walk away. She turned towards the more mature member of the conflict. Care to explain why a perfectly fine room is torn apart? She asked with a hint of steel in her voice. Inwardly she was quite angry the woman attacked her son, regardless if her boy somehow lost his temper first and attacked first. She is quickly not becoming worth the trouble. She thought inwardly. The brat couldn't keep his mouth shut. Tsunade bit out. oh. Kushina faked interest. And that is why you, a 50-year-old woman, throws a temper tantrum like a little child and destroys a room of your host, she berated Tsunade like a child. Shizen winced, and started to look nervous as Tsunade clenched her fists. She did not know Kushina's strength, but was certain the redhead was strong, and getting stuck between the two powerful women duking it out was a fairly unhealthy position. Tsunade opened her mouth to give Kushina a scathing response, until she realized she didn't have anything to point out. If you are that unhappy here, you are more than welcome to leave, Tsunade. Kushina spoke coldly. Just don't mind the war in Taki or worry about the jumpy Kumo troops. And it isn't like a war hawk would put a bounty on your head. She spoke with sarcasm. You know I can't, you explained that to me personally. Tsunade grounded out. Kushina nodded, conceding the point. That is correct, and I am honoring the old alliance our clans have. She reminded the woman. However, her voice turned stern again. I can't have you rampaging in my base and assaulting my son for a handful of words. Understood. Tsunade ground out between gritted teeth, before marching out herself. As she shouldered her way past the confused and fearful troops, she lay eyes on a scared little girl with purple hair. For unknown reasons most of her body was bandaged up. She had seen the girl before waiting patiently outside the room, and suddenly Naruto's anger-fueled words replayed in her mind. Lash out to anyone who needs you help. The girl shivered under her gaze, slowly retreating away from her. The fearful look the girl shot her snapped something into Tsunade, and a flood of shame rushed through her mind. Here was a girl with some kind of problem, looking for her specifically for help, yet was terrified of her. Terrified of her just because she couldn't keep her temper in check. Closing her eyes and taking a deep breath, she composed herself and asked in a kind voice as she knelt down. Why do you have those bandages? The girl fidgeted, clearly uncomfortable with the subject. Tsunade sighed inwardly, and stood back up, gently guiding the girl to another room, pointedly ignoring the surprised crowd behind her. Kushina raised an eyebrow at the sudden change, wondering what her son had said in his fit of anger that somehow reached the woman. She had gained some insight on Kimimara's condition before he fell into battle. She had sent the girl Anko found to Tsunade. Karen's short investigation left them both unsure on how to treat it. Then a question popped up in her mind. Why did Naruto search her out in the first place? She sighed. Regretting her earlier wishes for Taki to explode, when she really needed time to spend with her son, she didn't have it. Jiraiya wandered the southern lands of the Land of Fire. He had been buffing up his spy network the best he could in the turbulent times. Kushina's painful accusation caused him to indirectly make contacts in the village of Konoha. He was mildly surprised Danzo did not people to silence him, but other known anti-Danzo groups were also still alive, so he chalked it up to not wishing to spend the resources on nominal threats. Suits me just fine to stay under his radar. He thought as he entered another sleepy village. He was still unsure about Kushina's words. He was unable to confirm if it was true if Nagato truly was the leader of Akatsuki. And even if he is, what is her game by encouraging me to find a new apprentice, he wondered. A thought that was haunting him ever since the conflict in Tenzuka. As a spymaster he was usually able to figure out each party's motives, or at the least glimpse their long-term plan. With Kushina he drew up a blank. With Akatsuki he was unsure what they wanted to gain from gathering all the Bjo, aside from the obvious boost of power. Once again he thought. That woman was right, my spy network is pathetic. He thought glumly. He momentarily thought of searching out the nearest hot spring or river to peek on. Woman, but he quickly quashed those desires. It was clear he let his vices control him too much, neglecting both his duties as spymaster and his personal training. His thoughts once again spiraled to the what-if game. And once again he desperately tried to fight off the sense of failure for his teacher, and in a lesser sense his students that somehow started to walk the dark path for what seemed world domination. As he trudged further through the village while his thoughts whirled around in circles, his sharp ears picked up the sounds of a scuffle. His interest piqued, he quickly leapt up the roof, disappearing from the sight for the villagers. In an alley, he saw a youth, he guessed between the age of 12 to 14, fighting off 3 thuggish young men with improvised weapons while protecting a young lady. "Keep your hands off her," the boy shouted energetically. "Out of the way, idiot, she is a bloodline freak." One of the thugs shouted back. "Bloodline haters in the land of fire? Must be immigrants from the land of water." Jiraiya thought, surprised before his thoughts turned dark again. "How did I miss such significant movement of population?" he asked himself. The thugs moved forward, and to Jiraiya's surprise the boy created water out of thin air without any hand signs. He sensed the boy chakra, which was quite significant. "We all fled from that maniac's grasp, yet you want to continue your hatred here?" the boy demanded. The thugs shrugged uncaringly. "Then it will never end, and we will just keep hating each other forever," the boy argued passionately. "Doesn't change, she is a freak, and so are you," one of the thugs argued, not really listening to what the boy had said. Before they could raise their makeshift weapons, Jiraiya leapt down and handily knocked them out. "No worries, the great toad sage Jiraiya is here," he exclaimed, taking a heroic pose. The boy and the young lady looked at him dumbly, surprised by his sudden entrance. Behind the facade of idiocy, however, Jiraiya was taking in the boy with analytical eyes. Either he has a lot of latent talent, or he had training before. I don't see which kind of bloodline or hidden technique the girl can have, but the boy's ability to maintain those water spheres even with his attention somewhere else is impressive. Perhaps this is a fated meeting, he mused. "Well, young man, what is your name?" Jiraiya asked. As Shibuki walked out of Danzo's office, he resisted the urge to lash out and use his hidden eyes Koto Amatsukami on the foolish boy to force him to commit suicide out of shame. He took a deep breath, reminding himself the weakness of emotions. It represented a new danger to Konoha, however. Now the upstart village had 2 Jinchuriki, both high up in the tail scale too. With the proven alliance the village had with Suna, the alliance had the most tailed beasts under their control, his spies giving him indications that Iwa and Kyumo suddenly lost one of theirs, and Mizu's second container was a missing Nin, his status unknown. Danzo's mind whirled as how to possibly convince the 6-tailed slug container to fight on Konoha's side, but he lacked information, aside that it was a man who did not align himself to either Yagura, the crazed 3-tailed beast container who started a campaign to exterminate the bloodline clans, or the rebels, who fought for their right to exist. Why didn't those fools just leave the land of water and join a bloodline-loving village like Konoha? They would be welcomed with open arms here. Danzo thought. He shook his head. They are loyal to their country, admirable, but useless for me. He stopped thinking about how to gain a Jinchuriki for Konoha, and focused how to break the bad news to his forces and the outside world. The fall of Taki was well known, although nearly everybody, Taki ninja included, were clueless how it could have happened. Trees don't suddenly explode after all, and the explosion was far too large to be natural, ignoring the completely unsupportive environment. It was only because the coincidental entry in the bingo book, although Danzo did not believe in coincidence, that they could identify the leader of the Root group. The descriptions Shibuki gathered later about the Root team made the man slap his face. The Kyubi container had dyed his hair red, but hadn't bothered to hide his distinctive whisker marks. It was for Danzo, and subsequently Shibuki, a surprise that the thought-dead Mitarashi Enko was still alive. But for Danzo it made sense if Kushina knew about the seal on her memories that Enko switched sides. And quickly ensured Shibuki Oto did not have a way to convince loyal ninja to their side without apparent effort. The last member of the team should have had rang some alarm bells in Danzo's mind. Konoha were not known for their usage of war fans, yet a girl, he suspected the Kazekage's daughter, rounded up the 4-man team. The girl's appearance had him puzzled for a moment until he came to the logical conclusion. They cemented the alliance with a political marriage. Interesting. He thought, spotting a potential weakness to exploit. He quickly wrote a memo to enter the girl into Konoha's bingo book for elimination. joining the Kazekage's youngest, and Ichibi Jinchuriki in Konoha's books. It didn't explain why both the Jinchuriki and his wife were both risked in a mission to retrieve the Nanabai Jinchuriki. Perhaps a connection, convinced the girl with emotions like, to be loved, he theorized with some distaste. Shibuki had noted the girl was disliked like the Kyubi Jinchuriki was. Fools, all of them. Only Iwa and Kumo seemed to know how to treat and train their weapons. Danzo thought. He once again rued that he failed to get his hands on the Kyubi boy. It still disturbed Danzo that Oto knew about the mission. He was certain he left the group that needed to know very, very small. How do I investigate this without alerting them? Danzo mused. It is clear the enemy has still reliable sources of information despite my attempts to purge them. Inside the office, his hands idly working through the useless paperwork, his mind meanwhile whirled with choices, options and strategies to bring Konoha to the top. Despite being a perceived weakness in his own mind, he was blind to his own arrogance and pride. He would never consider out there in the world, there was a mind as cunning, if not more, as his own. Kushina was tired, although the big battle between Konoha and Iwa had happened, to her slight surprise, ended in an effective draw. Everybody was extremely jumpy, which sadly included her spy network. The draw was the best solution for her plans, with Iwa and Konoha bearing fangs at each other. She spent the night organizing a massive misinformation campaign against both sides. If everything went according to her plan, either side would think they would be evenly matched, with the opportunistic Oto and Suna, and the unpredictable Kumo. Neither side would be inclined to continue the slugging match. This uneasy peace would also mean neither side could spend the resources to deal with Oto or Suna in any meaningful manner. Exactly as Kushina had planned. Without thinking, she walked into Naruto's room, so used to slipping into his bed to hug the stuffing out of him she hadn't realized it was morning for him. So she was mildly surprised as she looked into the eyes of the awake boy, who looked at her with a mixture of apprehension and thoughtfulness, which soon shifted into worry. Whatever he had on his mind quickly shoved away. "Are you alright, Mom?" Naruto asked. "Just tired, Naruken." Kushina responded, stifling a yawn. He nodded. "You have been having short nights lately," he confirmed as he gently guided Kushina to her bed. Kushina agreed with a yawn she couldn't stifle and lay down. She noticed Naruto had moved to turn off the lights. Her tired mind decided to put the things she wanted to talk about with Naruto away for now, and closed her eyes. She vaguely noted Naruto covered her up with a weak laugh before she fell asleep. She awoke an unknown time later, hearing her son's voice arguing with someone at the door. "Under attack," she heard Naruto demand. The response was too muffled for her sluggish mind to properly decipher. "So there is no Shrank ninja attacking us, Konoha and Iwa are not attacking us, and there is no Strabeju. What kind of news would be so critical to disturb my mother's well-deserved rest?" Naruto demanded, and even from her position the edge in his voice was clear. Kushina vaguely heard the word report before her son cut in again. "Not important enough, put it on top of her desk, go." The tone of command was clear, despite Naruto having no actual rank. She didn't hear any response, so she presumed his order was obeyed. She pulled herself up and stretched. She had no clue how long she had rested, but considering she no longer felt tired and her mind was crystal clear, she had slept quite a while. Naruto glared as in his mind, idiotic messenger ran off. A report that an island his mother was looking for specifically was important, yes, but no, wake up the leader important in his mind. The team hadn't suffered casualties despite the unexpected resistance. "Can't those idiots see how tired Mom was?" he ranted in his mind. Naruto felt ashamed of himself. He hadn't noticed how much his mother was wearing herself out. Yes, he had vaguely noted she went to sleep long after he was out to snuggle up to him, yet she woke up the same time he did. That changed when he saw his extremely tired mother stumble into his room in the morning. His protective instincts flaring, he practically shoved her into bed and decided to grab a good Fuinjutsu book and set up shop outside his room's door, vowing to futon, de tapa any idiot who would try to wake his mother across the hallway without a very good reason. Only an invasion or the end of the world would be a good enough reason in the Naruto's opinion. He sat down with a huff and reopened the book at the page he was at. He was about to lose himself into the theory again when he noticed his room lights were on again. With a curse in his mind, he closed the book and quickly formed a shadow clone to grab food as he entered the room. "Mom?" he asked as he saw his mother stretch. "Hello Naruken." Kushina responded with a smile. She had put together Naruto clearly decided to guard her room from anyone awakening her for one thing or the other, his protectiveness destroying her worries about pushing him away. "How long have I been asleep?" Naruto glanced at the clock. "About 10 hours, did I wake you up?" Naruto replied. Kushina withheld a frown while she waved off his question. "I was more tired than I thought." "Did anything happening?" she asked as she started to undress herself, having noticed she plainly smelled. "Not much, although one idiot mentioned your plans were showing to be successful. I am not sure why he would want to wake you up for that." Kushina chuckled as she saw Naruto's annoyed expression. She silently agreed however. She moved towards the bathroom, Naruto closely behind her. "Anything else?" she inquired. "Some scout reports about," he made the quotation marks with his hands. "Possible invasion forces by Konoha. I told him to let the field commander deal with it. And some other scouts find an island you were looking for. Although I am not sure how you lose one in the first place," he quipped. Kushina chuckled at the weak joke. "Ah, there might be family on it," she explained, not seeing the surprised look from Naruto as he was sitting outside the bath next to her. The clone soon returned with a meal, which Kushina grateful ate in bath as she let the hot water relax her body. The long sleep reminded her that she had been pushing herself, and clearly the world hadn't decided to burn while she slept. So they enjoyed the rare chance to unwind. She realized she had time to speak with her son, and clearly had his full attention as he sat silently next to her. "Naruto." Naruto stiffened at the use of his full name instead of Naruken. "Are you angry at me?" she asked. "No." Naruto shot out surprised. "Then why are you not talking to me about what bothers you?" she asked. Naruto started, visibly struggling with his words. After a handful of seconds he deflated. "How do I say? I am sorry Mom, you're right and I was being reckless, help me," he spoke in a hopeless tone, clearly conveying he had no idea how to approach his mother with his problem. Kushina was startled by the honest admission, before she felt like slapping herself. Stupid Kushina. He spent 13 years not showing any weaknesses to anybody. He doesn't know how to ask for help. She thought, suddenly realizing that Naruto had no how to be a good son books to read opposed to the multitude of parenting books she had slugged through over the years to be the best mother she could be. She quickly turned and bent over the tub's edge, pulling Naruto into a hug, not caring she was getting his clothes wet. After a moment of surprise Naruto returned the hug. "Sorry Naruken for jumping to a conclusion, it looks like we are both new to this mother-son thing she asked. Naruto laughed weakly. "Yeah. Wouldn't want to miss it for anything," he admitted warmly. Kushina beamed, happy their relationship was back on track, having weathered the rough patch without harm. She released the hug and stepped out of the bath, quickly drying herself and dressing. "Well, let's run the empire shall we Naruken?" she asked with humor as they walked out of Naruto's room. "Naturally Mom," Naruto replied cheekily. A week passed, Naruto spending less time in training and more with his mother. During this period he also ran into Hinata, and was slightly disappointed in the girl's lack of initiative to search him out. The girl was still being trained up to Oto's standards so was present inside the base. It made him wonder about what a good girl would be for him. His mother had gently breached the subject in the moments they had together, despite being quite hectic period for his mother. She was managing the misinformation campaign into the small details, just short of going out of the field herself to feed the Konoha and IWA spymasters the information on the other sides. All the while keeping eyes on the other nations and factions, ordering missions in the land of Oto and islands unrelated to the major groups. It was during this period they learned how Temari had made it into the Konoha's bingo books. Temari's eyebrows twitched violently, her own face staring neutrally back at her from the page in Konoha's stolen bingo book. The page was still there despite her best attempts at denial. In other circumstances she might have been a bit prideful, it was after all a recognition of one's strength to be marked as a target. She knew she was nearing the power, responsibilities, and knowledge expected from a special jounin with her abilities with her war fan. However, it was not her strength that landed her into the bingo book pages. Somebody in Konoha strongly suspected she was a political bride, married to Naruto, who was recognized on a different page as the son of the Otokage, although his status as a demon container was still hidden to the outside world. No sense admitting to everyone you lost your Jinchuriki. She had to admit the younger boy was cute and quite strong, and he clearly cared for family and those similar to him, attributes she admired. However, the boy was too wild for her, too willing to leap head first into combat, and the constant sense of impatience he tackled things with. Although once he got started on something, he did not give up. She calmed down after giving her supposed groom a solid whack with her fan and destroying a dozen or so training dummies with her fan. How that infuriating boy could find amusement in it angered her greatly, no matter how cute the laughing grin was. She suddenly froze. Her father could probably use this to push them closer. The man meant well, but did he really have to suddenly gain interest in making was going to give him grandchildren? Couldn't Gaara get together with that girl that has a crush on him, or perhaps Kankuro stop wearing that makeup he steals from me and find a girl himself? Decide again. Well, Gaara will be proud on me. He embraces his entry. It gives him fights to make him feel alive. She thought wryly. She still felt a bit frustrated and looked at the nearly knocked-out boy who was counting stars on the floor. With a kick to bring him back to reality, she shouted. It might not be an indoor jutsu, but you never know when you need it. She then promptly demonstrated it by nearly cutting him in half with a blade made of air. Kushina stretched as she read the reports in her office. Her plan had worked, but not well enough.